there have been tremendous victories at pushing back on these anti-immigration bills. So
say that again, please.
Okay, the wheels of justice move slow, but they keep moving.
It's a painful.
My name is Daniel Raúl Ortega Jr. They named me after my dad, but everybody knows me as Danny Ortega. From the time I started the first grade till today, most people know me from Danny. Professionally, as a lawyer, most people call me Licenciado Ortega. But I'll take whatever I can get because my career and my life is about all of the people who helped me along the way. Starting, of course, with my mom and dad, Daniel Sr. and Elvira Ortega. My mom and dad were very hardworking, did everything they could within their reach to bring us up, to feed us, to clothe us, to put a roof over our head. Things were tough. My dad had a third grade education, so you can imagine, how tough it was for him to find jobs that were plentiful and paid a lot. But he made the best of everything he had. My dad, in his own right, exceeded the expectations that people had of him, given his educational background and where he came from. Came from Mexico. Though you should know that my dad was born here in Lavina, Arizona, during the harvest, the cotton harvest. My grandparents would come to the U.S. to pick cotton and then go back home to Juarez. So my dad was born here and raised in Juarez. My mom was born in Torreón, Coahuila, came to Juarez, met my dad, oh well, and then they moved here. And my story starts at a very young age when I came to Arizona at the age of 4 years old. At the time, it was my brother Carlos and myself that came with my mom and dad. My mom's mom and dad, my maternal grandparents, lived here in Tempe, Arizona. And as a result of that connection, by the way, they lived in La Victoria. So my first home in this country and in this state was in La Victoria, over on Apache and Price. Thereafter, we moved to Guadalupe, and from Guadalupe, I lived in Guadalupe for a while. Matter of fact, my first bad experience was in Guadalupe. I attended the Kyrene School District, and in the first grade, I flunked. I failed the first grade. Well, ni modo. Didn't speak any English. Had to hold me back. I can tell you though today that's probably the best thing that happened to me. And so most of our lives though, at a very young age, we lived at 40th Street in Hadley. That was another old community, old barrio, that ultimately was bought by the airport to expand the airport. I still remember the day I got appointed to the Airport Authority Commission by then Mayor Terry Goddard. And the first meeting that I went to was in Terminal 4. They had just built it. And I sat there in this beautiful conference room table, and I said to everybody in the room, you know what? I'm sitting where my house was that this airport bought out. I mean, it was true. I literally came that far. We moved from there to the place where I lived most of my life as a young man, and that was on 19th Avenue in Buckeye, over by Sherman Park. We lived on Tonto, 21st Avenue in Tonto. Went to school at what was then Murphy 3, now Hamilton Elementary. Graduated from there and went on to Phoenix Union. By the way, I also attended while I lived there in that neighborhood on 40th Street in Hadley. By the way, the name of that neighborhood was Lincoln Acres. South of the tracks, near the dog track. And I attended Balt School for 1 year and attended Crockett School up until the 7th grade, and then came over to the Barrio on 19th Avenue in Buckeye and graduated from Murphy number 3. I went to Phoenix Union High School, 4 years. After Phoenix Union High School, I went to Arizona State University and graduated there with an undergraduate degree in political science. Then ultimately went to law school, graduated from ASU Law School, and have been a lawyer for a very, very long time. Can't tell you how long, man. Can't tell you how long. But been there for a very long time, and I've had a tremendous degree of success. Not because necessarily of me, but because of all the people from the day I came to Arizona to the time I became a lawyer. Were very, very important people in my life who helped me along, who in any way they could encouraged me, supported me, gave me things to do, gave me things to learn. And my success today is because of all those people and all the clients who trust me and who came to me to give them service. Now, clearly I had to do my part, and I have to work hard. I have to take care of people and their legal problems. And that comes with the territory. My way of thanking people more than anything else is to give back to the community. From the time I was, a sophomore in high school, I started thinking more about what I could do to work within the community, what I could do to help the community. The story about my community involvement started about my sophomore year. You should know that I come from a very deep, deep Mexican family. I'm talking, we came from both sides of the border. As a matter of fact, I was born in El Paso, but I lived in Juarez the first days of my life. My mom had me in El Paso, but they lived in Juarez. Lived in El Paso for a very short time and then came to Arizona. I know you natives think I was born here, but man, I've been here a long time, from the age of 4. Please, give me a break. Let me join your club. But it was a very, very good experience for me as I lived my life in grade school. Even though I had failed the first grade, I always had this sense of ambition. I always had this sense of wanting to do better, especially after realizing that I had flunked the first grade. I wanted to prove to myself and everybody else that, it just happened and that I was going to do better. About the 6th grade, I made the honor roll for the first time, and it was like a flower that opened. I mean, just something that set me free, that made me feel like I could do anything I wanted to do. Of course, there were some people along the way in grade school that helped me. Teacher by the name of Mrs. Cummings, the kindest teacher I've ever met in the 2nd grade. Mrs. Webb in the 3rd grade. Mr. Haggard in the 6th grade. The one teacher where I made the honor roll for the first time at Crockett School. And then ultimately Miss Crabtree in the 8th grade. I mean, in the 7th grade. In the 8th grade, Victor Tapia, who is my 8th grade teacher, was a big mentor of mine in a very, very significant way. When I was in grade school, it was very common in the schools that Mexicanos, Mexican Americans, we've changed a lot of labels in our time. I know today I'm a Latino, but I used to be other things, Mexicano, Mexican American, Chicano. But Mr. Tapia honored me by giving me a Besta scholarship, a Latino organization back then that gave scholarships to Latinos, because typically those scholarships that came from the Rotary or came from those clubs, they were usually for Anglo kids or Asian kids. And Besta Club took care of giving scholarships to Latinos, Mexicanos back then. And I happened to be one of those. I'll tell you, if there's anything I can point to that really gave me encouragement and gave me what I feel a sense of worth, was that $25 scholarship. And remember, that's 2 years of books at Phoenix Union High School. I really felt like I could accomplish something. I felt the sense that I was valued and that I had value and that I could go to school and that I could go to college. So when I went to Phoenix Union, very inspired. And when I got to Phoenix Union, though, I got a little bit disappointed. I had to fight my way out of the situation. At the time, most of the Mexicanos that went to Phoenix Union were enrolled in vocational education classes, as if we didn't have what it took to go to college. And most of us took what we could get. And most of us, from an economic basis, weren't thinking beyond high school. We were thinking of, hey, we got to get out, we got to work, and we got to help the family. Hey, a lot of the students back when I was at Phoenix Union High School, they had to work, even during school, even during the 4 years of high school. And they were thinking of ways to get ahead, and vocational education provided the quickest opportunity for a lot of our community to make it and to start working. But we never really had the sense of being pushed to go to college. I went there with that simply because of that scholarship and believing that I could do well. So my first week of class at Phoenix Union, they put me in a vocational ed program. And I was attending these shop classes. And by the way, hey, if that's what suits you, I'm not being critical of that. But because I had this ambition to go to college, I went up to my counselor and said, hey, you know, why am I in a vocational education program? Why am I in shop class, is what I said. Why am I in shop class? I want to go to college someday. Why am I not in college prep? Well, Danny, your scores weren't too good, you know, and your test in the 8th grade. And I'm like, well, scores of what? All the testing that we gave you? I said, but I got a scholarship. Do you remember that? I had good grades. I don't get this. Well, Danny, why don't you last out the semester and see how it goes for you and, you know, try this first. I said, no, I'm not trying anything. If you're not going to get me out of those classes, I'll talk to the principal. Well, I talked to the principal. He assigned me a new counselor. I got out of those shop classes and began what was a college prep program at Phoenix Union that ultimately, I believe, led to where I'm at today. Phoenix Union was one of the biggest milestones in my life. I had the opportunity there in so many ways with the help of so many people, teachers, coaches, you name it. They were all there to help me out. But I took advantage of it. I was freshman class president, sophomore class president, junior class president. I lost when I ran for student body, and I'll tell you guys that story in a minute. When I went for student body president, I lost that. But that was also a milestone in my life because I went a different direction. But I was on the cross-country team. I belonged to all kinds of clubs. It was just an unbelievable experience and an unbelievable growth that made me believe in myself that I could do better. Of course, you know, while I was there, I had to work. You know, speaking of the barrios, everybody at Phoenix Union is from all the barrios that we've been talking about. But like I told you, I was brought up in the Sherman Park area. I used to hang out at Cofelt. Went to church at Fatima. Used to go to the CYO at Fatima, CYO at St. Anthony's. Used to go to the Cana Hall for dances. Used to go to Sacred Heart, Immaculate Heart, all the churches in all those barrios. I had an opportunity to do a lot of all of this during high school. I worked, I worked in the fields, whether it be citrus, topping onions, picking cotton, a whole bunch of field work. Actually, the first job I actually got paid for is because I was mowing the lawn. My grandfather, my maternal grandfather, lent me his mower, and I went and asked the neighbor if I could cut the yard for a quarter. He said, sure. So that was the first money I ever made. And then went on to be a paperboy. I delivered the Phoenix Gazette and the Arizona Republic. And from there, you know, all kinds of other things happened. I worked at Food City. I worked at Walgreens, talking about the barrios. You know, Food City, Walgreens. I worked as an intern at Chicanos por la Causa down the street. You know, I mean, I had all these opportunities with all these people. All of it in that little circle. That little circle of barrios was my success. Where I worked, where I played, where I danced, where I had some of my best friends. Those barrios are very memorable and things that I'll never forget about all of them. I had familia that lived there. I had tios that lived on 18th Street and Mojave. I had primos on Hess and 16th Street. You name it, the barrios was where I used to be. Going back, though, somewhat to Phoenix Union, I also did experience, other than the whole thing about putting me in vocational ed when I wanted to go to college, is that my sophomore year, about April of my sophomore year, there were some students that came from Phoenix Union. They were members of an organization called MASO, the Mexican American Student Organization, and they were encouraging high school students to go to college, and more importantly, they wanted to recruit them to go to ASU. And so my counselor came to me, knowing how ambitious I was about going to college, said, hey, you're going to have some Mexican American students from some organization going to be on campus. They want to talk to some of the students here about going to college and what opportunities there are. So I was there. And I met with them, and I met with a few people, and then ultimately they invited me to a meeting at one of their houses. Once again, very ambitious to want to go to college, but what I didn't realize is that these students not only came to recruit people to go to ASU, but they came to start organizing. Back then, the Chicano movement was really heavy, and they were a part of that. Now, I didn't know this. I was there, wanting to meet these people to try to see how I could get into school. But they began to organize. And in the discussions, things like, one of my mentors, Sonny Nájera, Ascension Nájera, who, by the way, I worked for at Food City, and who was a manager at Food City, asked me one day, what do you want to be when you grow up, Danny? You say you want to go to college, but what do you want to be? I said, well, I think I want to be a Spanish teacher. And he says, a Spanish teacher? Yeah. I said, I speak English, I speak Spanish. And of course, the only role models that I really had there that were Mexicanos were my Spanish teachers, Maria Vega and Elvira Alarcón. Two more mentors. And he said, well, there's nothing wrong with you wanting to be a teacher, and I get it, you want to be a Spanish teacher, but haven't you ever thought of wanting to be a doctor, a lawyer, an engineer? And Sonny, by the way, was a pilot. He was going to graduate from ASU with a degree in aeronautical technology. I didn't know what the hell that was, but he says it's flying planes. And he put that bug in my ear. It was another life-changing moment that I could be a lawyer, a doctor. The blood thing, but lawyer, that sounded like something. And so my ambition started in my sophomore year to want to be a lawyer. And it just grew and grew and grew, and ultimately my dream was achieved. But something even more important happened there, and that was that they began to ask me questions about why I wasn't asking those questions. And I'm like, what questions? He says, well, have you ever thought about why it is you have so few Mexican American teachers here? Have you ever thought about why it is you have no Mexican American counselors? Have you ever thought about why you don't have any Mexican American administrators here? The only two people that you've mentioned thus far are the two Spanish teachers. Have you ever thought about why the conditions at this school, and as old as it is where we're all going to school, and all the new schools are being built around you, up in northwest Phoenix, northeast Phoenix, and further north, and how their buildings and their schools are much better. Have you ever wondered why? No, I was happy. I was doing well there. Well, but Danny, this isn't just about you. You need to start asking questions about these inequities. Back then I didn't know what that meant, but these things are different, and why are they better for others in other neighborhoods and not this neighborhood? And they began to wake me up, and of course they kept inviting me to more meetings, and I kept going to more meetings, and my interest in college was always the same, but my interest in really policy or politics, Chicano movement politics, really began to take a hold of me. When I ran for student body president, the Chicano movement had already had me, because I got up and gave a speech that really was the end of my mainstreaming career. I was a mainstreamer, okay? But don't forget, I was a mainstreamer, but I was also very, very proud of being a Mexicano. When it came to my family, when it came to my culture, when it came to our music, when it came to our food, all the things that we were as a community, I was proud of that. I was never ashamed, ever, of the color of my skin, the language that I spoke, in Spanish or in English, the food that I ate, the music that I listened to. My parents made me proud. culture lived who I was. So when these guys came on the campus, hey, it's like, yeah, it's good to be proud of who you are, but why aren't you getting an equal opportunity here? And so when I ran for student body president, I got up there and I said, look, it's time that this administration and this school stop herding us into vocational schools like we were a bunch of dummies. We have the opportunity to go to college too, and they should be putting us in college prep. Man, my opponent, she was a member of the band. The band put her up to run because I didn't like the way I was going to the left on these Chicano politics. And she gets up after me and says, well, I don't think that people who go to vocational schools are a bunch of dummies, like the way Danny does. I'm like, I never said that. I said that they ought not be hurting us in like we were, that there were some of us who wanted to go to vocational schools and shouldn't, and those of us who wanted to go to college, and we should be put into college prep, not all the time into vocational schools. And I didn't have time to get up and explain it. The die was cast, man. She had branded me, and she had kicked my butt with that little sentence. When the voting started, the lines in the vocational schools of people wanting to vote for the student body president were long, and the teachers made sure, and the administration made sure that they got up to vote. I lost. By the way, by 63 votes. But I lost. Could have been won. But that was another turn in my life because, being that mainstreamer, being in student politics, being with the administration, wanting to get along, wanting to go along, I didn't have to do it anymore. I could be me, and I could really get into the Chicano movement and talk about creating change and talk about inequities, talking about inequality, talking about discrimination. And I really got into it. And my senior year was nothing but politics in the Chicano community and our community, being proud of who we were. Went on to ASU, continued my Chicano politics, was president of Mecha for 3 years while I was there. And to this day, we're fighting to make things more equal and give our community the same opportunities that others get. Look, for those of you who believe that anybody can have anything that they want only if they work hard enough, I believe you, but it's not true that everybody has the same opportunity because of economics, because of education, because of a lot of things. We don't have that white privilege. We have to fight for everything we get, and we have to do it in the worst of circumstances. If we had the same opportunities that everybody else had, then why aren't we elevated? Because there are purposeful policies and cultures that not only keep us from getting where we need to be, but make sure that we don't. And I've been fighting that my whole life. I am by an exception, not the rule. I don't think I'm any better than the person that didn't graduate from high school. I am simply very happy that I had the opportunity, but I am no better than anybody else just simply because I have degrees. All of us came from different circumstances. All of us didn't get the same breaks. All of us didn't have a situation where we didn't have to go out and work to help support a family. There's a whole bunch of reasons why people didn't succeed. But it's not because they don't want it, and it's not because they don't work hard. It's because there are other obstacles that get in the way. Yeah, some of us made it, but not enough. Another part of my life that I think is important that led to all the things I've been able to do in this community is my involvement in politics. I got involved in Jordi Lopez's very first campaign for the Phoenix Union High School Board. Of course, he lost, but then he ran for the Board of Supervisors and won. And so the next campaign, I got involved in 2 campaigns. It was Jordi's for the Board of Supervisors and Alfredo Gutierrez for the state senate. And that kind of put a bug, in me, the political bug. And I was involved in a lot of political campaigns and a lot of levels. But the one that was probably the most important to me, and the one that was probably the most significant, they were all significant, but this one was to elect the very first Hispanic congressman in the history of Arizona, and that was Ed Pastor. Ed Pastor was a very close friend of mine and one of my biggest mentors in the political arena. And he ran for the Board of Supervisors and won. And after 20 years with the Board of Supervisors, he decided he wanted to run for Congress when then Congressman Mo Udall, passed away. And so I was the chairman of Congressman Ed Pastor's first campaign and worked with him for over 17 years. Now, in terms of mentors, I haven't mentioned very many, just a couple. I mentioned some teachers, okay? And in my lifetime, I've had, I mentioned Sandy Nájera. There was another, Joedy Lopez. The very first meeting, by the way, was at Joedy and Rosie Lopez's house that I went to in June of right after my sophomore year. People who touched my life and who cared for me. I had Ronnie Lopez gave me my first job at Chicanos por la Causa. I worked there and ultimately had me put on the board. I was on the board of Chicanos por la Causa for 9 years. I was 22 years old when I got on that board. When I graduated from law school and ultimately went out into private practice, it was my legal mentor was Richard Trujillo. While I was in college, I had people like, Sam Ramirez, who gave me my first job at the Chicano Mobile Institutes. I had Chris Marin, who was a librarian at ASU. I had Jerry Pastor, back then, Jerry Trujillo, who also mentored me. There was Belen Servin. There was Nelly Soto. There were a lot of people, all of them wanting to help me, all of them wanting to do something for me. Of course, I've already mentioned my mom and dad. They were my biggest mentors. My grandparents were big mentors of mine. I had tios who were very supportive of me. And of course, I got to mention my brothers and sisters, man. They're my heart. They're my heart and soul. All right? We've got my brother Carlos, who's also a graduate of ASU. We got my sister Hilda, who is also a graduate of ASU. I have my brother Fernando, who's also a graduate of ASU. I have my sister Gracie, who did not graduate, but was the first one in our family to retire. Explain that to me. My sister Gracie worked for the Roosevelt School District for 30 years and retired before all of us had degrees. What's up with that? Okay? And so after Gracie, we've got my sister Delia, who's a graduate of ASU. I got my brother Ricardo, who's a graduate of Grand Canyon, but he got it. I think I got them all, right? Carlos, Hilda, Fernando, Gracie, Delia, Ricardo, and Estela. 7 of them. Out of the 8 of us, 7 of us have degrees, undergraduate degrees, master's degrees, and so forth. That was from my mom and dad. All of that is due to them and their hard work and all the mentors that they had. I think I'd like to at least end with saying that I believe that my family is exemplary, but they're exemplary because along the way things were changing because equality was important during the Civil Rights Movement. The Civil Rights Act of 1964 was a big factor in people like myself and my family to be able to get ahead. The opportunity for grants, the opportunity for loans, the opportunity for scholarships, the opportunity for tutoring programs, the opportunity to be admitted, despite our scores, into universities. Okay? All of those things were products of the Chicano movement, of the civil rights movement. And all of those things gave us a break, gave us an opportunity that we otherwise wouldn't have had. So I ask all of you out there to work hard for yourselves and do what you can to make yourself and your family successful. But remember that there are a lot more people out there who need the same opportunities that my family had, and all of us can fight to have them. My dad and my mom are clearly and unequivocally the rocks of our family. But there were so many more people along the way that not only helped them, but helped us. And to all of you, even if I didn't mention your names, there's too many to mention, okay? I thank you from the bottom of my heart. I love you. And let's keep their legacies alive. And those legacies were born out of those barrios that we all love so much. Now, I really, really am thankful and am humbled by being asked for this interview. You know, there are parts of my life that I think are worth talking about if it brings encouragement to others, if it brings a sense of inspiration, and if it brings a sense of wanting to do more for yourself because you know you can, and because there are models out there who did. But we have to remember that if we don't tell our history, if we don't talk about the barrios, if we don't talk about our parents, if we don't talk about what got us to where we're at, it'll soon be forgotten. And I've said this many times, unless we tell our history, nobody else is going to tell it. And I think the Arizona Barrio stories and the people that behind it are going to revive a very good history about our barrios, communities that were thriving, communities that represented families, that represented, you know, the support for a lot of us. And will, in one way or another, teach young people, those who come behind us, what it was like 40 years ago or 50 years ago, and how proud we were as a community, and how much we relied on the barrios that we were raised in. So I'd like to thank them for the sacrifice that they're making. I'd like to thank them for everything they're doing to revive our history. Without them, I don't know that it would be done. Many have wanted to, but few have come forward. This is the one that's come forward the most, and we need to support them. This is a massive project with a lot of moving parts that needs a lot of support, and we ought to be there in any which way we can to support them. If you can buy their products, which are very good products that remind us of who we were and the barrios that we came from, or if you can contribute in any way, it is a way to keep our history alive. If you believe in our history, you will believe in the Arizona Barrio stories. You will believe in what they're doing in ways that nobody else has done before. So please, from the bottom of my heart, and for the sake of our community and those that come before us, support the Arizona Barrio stories. Thank you.